I'm Philip Harper, Musical Director of Cory Band in Wales, UK, composer, arranger and music editor of Right and Round music publishers. I've been working with brass bands for 35 years, and today I'd like to introduce the subject of how to score for brass band, something which causes confusion and misunderstanding, even amongst seasoned composers. Like most complicated things, I believe it pays to be informed about past conventions and wisdom, rather than rush in and try and reinvent the wheel straight away. So here, I will lay out the absolute basics of the art, a beginner's guide, if you like. There are two quirks which are difficult for everyone to get their heads around at first, but provide a good starting point for us. 1. All instruments are written in treble clef, except bass trombone and percussion. There are historical reasons for this quirk, which made it much easier to teach early bandsmen en masse how to read music. For many musicians, it is distinctly odd to find even tubas reading treble clef, but that's how it is. Number 2, all instruments transpose into either B-flat or E-flat, again except bass trombone and percussion. This is to do with the unique instrumentation of the brass band, which in the 19th century adopted Adolph Sax's innovative and perfectly blended sax horn family. A lot of composers, when scoring for brass band, use B-flat pitch as the default pitch in their mind, as opposed to concert pitch, in which case you only ever have to transpose up a fifth for the E-flat instruments. I retune my keyboard so that I can play the notes of B-flat pitch and concert pitch will sound. This way, I get to hear the sounding pitch, which is only a tone away anyway, but I don't have to think too much about transposition. Okay, with those two unusual things in mind, let's have a look at the score itself. At the top, you have the E-flat soprano cornet, of which there is only one, and it sounds a minor third higher than it's written. The next 4 staves are the Bflat Cornets. These sound a tone lower than written. On the solo B-flat cornet line, there are 4 players, traditionally written on one stave, although sometimes divided into 2 staves for more complicated music. The Repiano cornet line, usually called rep, is only for a single player. This player sits next to the soprano cornet and so is often paired together in voicings. The second and third cornet lines have 2 players each. Then comes the Bflat Flugelhorn. This instrument plays the important role of blending the cornet sound with the sax horns below. There is only one, and it sometimes plays with the cornets, and often with the horns. It provides a very effective higher voice for the trombone section at moderate dynamics, and is favoured by many composers as a solo instrument in its own right. Next are 3 E-flat tenor horn lines, These sound an octave lower than the soprano cornet. There are two B-flat baritone lines sounding an octave lower than cornets. There are three trombone staves, first, second, and bass, which, don't forget, is in bass clef concert pitch. The tenor trombones are written in treble clef and at the same pitch as the baritones above. Even though there are two B-flat euphoniums, they're traditionally written on only one clef. For more complicated music, the players are separated onto two clefs. They again play one octave below cornets. There are four basses in the brass band written on two treble clef staves. Firstly, the E-flat basses, which sound an octave below the tenor horns. And finally, the B-flat basses, which sound an octave below the euphoniums and baritones. Percussion goes at the bottom of the score and is notated conventionally. I think it's worth noting how these instruments have been used traditionally to create the cohesive and blended sound for which the brass band is famous, for example, in a simple chorale. This would be achieved by placing the melody on solo cornets and euphoniums, with the soprano cornet taking a higher octave where practical. The inner parts stretching down from rep cornet through to baritones, and the bass line on the basses, with doubled lower octaves sounding the best, where they are possible in B-flat bass. The trombones should have three separated parts to add most value to the mix. It's also worth noting that conventionally, the higher the part within each section, the higher the note. Third cornet or second horn players may actually specialise in the lower tones. There's also no tradition whatsoever for giving solo lines to secondary players, as there is in the orchestral world. In brass bands, the star players sit in the principal seats, and it's expected the highest and most difficult or exposed parts go there. Finally, I should mention that some musicians believe that the brass band is limited in its colour palette. It's certainly true that with conventional scoring, you can achieve a real homogeneity of ensemble. However, there are countless ways of unlocking many different colours, as any glance at established brass band repertoire will reveal. Maybe that's the subject for another video. Thanks for watching.